I'm Eric Dickerson. Wait a minute. I'm Brent Leary.
I'd love to come up with a football analogy, but we're doing so bad, I don't even want to say it. I'm Paul Greenberg.
And I'm just going to say the Lakers won. I'm Nicole France. Oh, I should say Nicole France.
Oh, there it is. And that officially makes us the CRM Playaz. It is I don't know how many weeks we've been doing this in a row. Do you? I mean,
we had one week of clarity last week, and that's it for the year.
It's like one shining moment.
Right. And now it's back to blur.
My time is counted in dog years because I'm only technically on once a month, except I'm not. Sometimes I'm on more often, so I'm totally confused anyway.
Well, you were right. Last week, so yeah.
I know.
And it's also why dog and cat years don't actually work.
But you know who does work? Sven. Sven is with us all the time.
He's the only point of clarity we even have week to week.
And Sven. He always does he? Is it me or every week does he greet us in a different language or something?
No, I was just thinking the same thing.
Sven, how many languages do you actually speak? Because that's one of those things. Inquiring minds want to know.
130, I'm sure, something in that vicinity.
Yes, but we are back. It is Thursday, and we are back at our duly allotted time of 3 p.m. East Coast, Eastern time, or whatever you want to call it. We've recovered from last week. That was great, wasn't it, last week?
It was.
Well, the repercussions are still coming in.
The consequences and repercussions.
That's right. Well, I won't mention who, but I got a thing today from a company that I'm sort of mildly PO'd at for a while. And he just is doing some work with them. He had no idea the history. I know this guy from another company. And I told him a little bit about the history of the company. I'm mildly PO'd, but he said CRM Playaz are blowing up. They're doing amazing. He literally brought it up. And one of the reasons he was writing is he wanted me to see if we could get the CEO of the company on CRM Playaz. And I know this CEO extremely well, and I love him. But,
all right, so no. you know him very well, but do you know what football team he follows?
Well, the one thing, given this guy, I'm almost sure of it's not the Patriots.
Then he's more than welcome to join us.
That's right. Well, here's the other thing. I talked to a guy today who is runs partnerships with one of the major online event platforms. And I didn't get to teams, but the first thing when we were talking about it, he lives in Palo Alto, but I said, where are you from? And he goes, Boston. So I said, well, that might disqualify you from something I was thinking about.
Well, we'll see. You vouch for him. Otherwise, he was a nice guy. He was a good person, right?
He was great, actually, but we're going to talk again next week. Yeah. But I'll get confirmation.
I was just going to say, it's nice to know that all of the biases here are conscious.
Oh yeah, no, we don't deal.
No, we'll tell you right up front. Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, I thought the panel last week, everything last Thursday was great. I just had one point of contention, one little bone to pick.
Only one.
Only one. Let's see. One dude was two people were Seahawks fans, I think. No, one Seahawk fan, two Patriots fans, and at least one or two 49ers fans, if I'm not mistaken.
One.
So, are you sure? Because I thought Suresh was a Boston guy too, right? Wasn't he?
Ooh, I think you might be right.
Oh, and then there's a Buffalo guy in there too, but
that's what I'm saying. The math wouldn't work without that Buffalo guy. So
basically, the panel was kind of, from a perspective, kind of
tainted.
Yeah, a little bit.
Not diverse enough for Brent's taste.
Right. Well, but you're right, Nicole. Look, life's way too short to have unconscious biases. You should be fully conscious of all your biases.
Totally agree.
Act accordingly.
We're going to have to say goodbye to Sven now. He was doing so well. I don't know. Something just, or someone put him awry. But anyway, No, I'm just kidding. I'll just say it was great last week. The folks are do we call them diehards? Our CRM Playaz folks. I just call them folks. They are great. 2.5 hours, 1,100 comments.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Amazing. That's all I can say to that.
Well,
all right.
We'll never top it. So I'll just live in the moment.
So that'll be our first and only CRM.
Right.
Well, it was though. It was really pretty great because I mean, where else are you going to get that group of people together having a pretty open and candid conversation? And I will say that was one of the things that impressed me. I think there was some good stuff that came out of that, and certainly some thought-provoking topics that came up. And I know we all sort of jumped right on them, like the culture vultures that we are as analysts afterward too.
That went really well too, though. Those discussions. I mean, the one that seemed to trigger the most was the pricing thing at the end of the panel. And as a lot of people may or may not have seen, but Diginomica, Dennis Howlett wrote a huge article on it, actually. But I think Bob Stutz rips off enterprise pricing Band-Aid.
Yeah, something like that.
That was definitely a UK tabloid headline, right? And but the article was great, actually, because he covered all the aspects of it.
He went deep.
Yeah, he did.
Very deep.
It was really.
And speaking of Dennis Howlett, we haven't done something in a while. Yeah, we haven't done one of those pins sections, protect the identity, not the stupidity. We haven't done one of these. And I all credit to this to our buddy Alan Berkson, Big Al Berkson, Bab. I don't think he'll be like to be called Bab, but No,
because I'm about to say Big Al and Bab literally contradict each other.
Our buddy Al Berkson. No, he pointed out a tweet, and it came from Dennis Howlett, and it's so fitting for a pin. So I'm gonna pop it up here. Now this is a public tweet, so I just took a screenshot of a public tweet that's out there. The name protection in this one is kind of iffy. You could probably make it out if you really try hard, but that's not the point. The point is this. Just read what this dude said.
Oh my God.
I'll read it for everybody else. I would like to add you to my network of contacts because I think it is useful for me now to publicize my innovative products. For you, it may be less useful now that I am not yet well known, but I'm sure you'll be glad if I become famous. Thanks.
I got to give that points for candor. Honestly.
That's one where you almost don't want to protect the identity.
No. I mean, like, it's almost tempting to connect just to be like, where is this going to go? Really? Really?
Wow.
I know where it needs to go.
I know.
That was brutal. That's about as bad as it gets.
I was trying to figure out what that picture is next to, like what he's using for his picture.
Oh, want me to put that back up?
Yeah, go back and look. I mean, I'm wondering if that's his product. And it looks like
are they lava lamps?
I don't know.
It could be a drone, maybe. Right?
Wow.
Or it could be.
He could be like the Unidroner. Like something.
It's a lava drone.
Maybe it's an aerial. Yeah, lava drone. That's it. All houses. It actually lands on the roof of all houses built before 1970.
I don't know, but that LinkedIn invite that lands like a bomb because there's no way.
No. Brent, I was inspired by what you guys have done here with pins. So I actually gave a presentation at a virtual conference recently where I was talking about a few key trends, and one of them was sales using social media. I love it. It is indeed, I think, at this point, Alan, his corporate narrative. But it's nice to know Bob and I have the same points of view on this stuff too. But I actually took a little collection of some of my own pins examples and use that as, I've got some great examples of where connecting over social media has totally created opportunities that I know have actually resulted in business. But man, the amount of stuff that we get that is just schlock. And like, did anybody bother to think about the recipient of this stuff? I mean, I will say again, points for candor. He did. He knew there was nothing in it for Den, but man,
that's true.
I don't know. You're much kinder than me, I have to say. I just like, I literally, I give him 0 points for anything. And honestly, I don't care if anybody gets famous, much less him, right? So it's who cares, right? Look, I'll tell you what, Guy, whoever you are, you would have been wiser to lead with what your product was, and and that might have interested somebody. So I know your first name because the covering isn't that good. And right. But I know what your last name starts with and a couple of letters into it. But whoever you are, my friend GV, put out what product you have and then see what else you can do with that. Don't lead with the idea that we really all want to make you famous. None of us do, right? Somebody might actually be interested in the product you have, however. So why don't you say something about that? Unless you're trying to hide it.
I'm almost thinking what we should have is like a consulting session on this show where like people who are thinking about sending a message like that could come in and we could offer them some constructive advice on what to say and what not to say. We could charge. We can add Stripe to this thing, Brent. It could be great.
I got one other thing. I just popped it. How did Dennis get his name like that? What did? That's pretty.
I don't know. He's done that forever. He's had that forever. That little circle things he does.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually. I know.
Just
another shout out to Bab for pointing that one out.
Yes,
I like that. Big Al Berkson. That's pretty good.
Yeah, again, that's okay, but the acronym really is going to kill him. It will ruin his career. It will ruin his corporate narrative completely.
Oh, yeah. His corporate narrative would take a vicious turn to the dark side.
Vicious. That's right.
Where ours is already, apparently. So.
Right. Always been.
Okay. So we have a guest, and I can see her in the green room. I hope she can partake in the Cronuts. Wait a minute. Yeah.
I told her not to. I told her they were stale and not to eat them.
Okay. Well, maybe. Did we get the brookies yet? Did we get any brookies?
No, I didn't see them when I was in there. No.
Oh, okay. Well,
honestly, I've had a problem ordering from Etsy. I could not bring myself to do it.
Well, Bob's got a recipe for how we can make our own cronuts, I think. So we could do a little virtual cronut taste off.
Ooh, cronut.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cronut taste off.
That sounds like the next big CRM Playaz Productions.
I like it. The next spinoff. It's a spinoff.
We could do left coast versus right coast thing.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
Cronuts versus brookies.
Or we could do like bagels, New York versus everybody else, because
in the entire world. Well, I've got my vote in.
I know where to get the best blueberry bagels.
That's right. And I've got my vote in. Let's just say that. I already know how I'm voting, regardless of what bagels are there.
I think that's a foregone conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. All right. But before we bring her on, a couple of quick topics that we can go over real quick, because this week has been kind of a busy week and stuff. Actually, one thing that came up, let's see, do I have this? And let's get some quick takes on this. So, yeah, I think it was like the early part of the week. Let me see. Let me bring all.
It feels like it was like 6 months ago already, but
it does.
It does. But Twilio, I think it was like announced Monday or something, or over the weekend, Monday. Or something like that. That they had bought a rather significant purchase with buying Segment.
Yep.
$3.2 billion, as you see here. Nicole, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think this is really interesting. And I got to say, I didn't see this one coming, but for me, it makes a whole lot of sense. What you've got, in my view, is, Segment, which has really largely sold into a marketing audience. They definitely deliver value for more than just marketers. But I think that's where they've had a really comfortable position in the market because, that is the set of needs that they're primarily serving. And then you've got Twilio that is coming from the heritage of all things sort of inbound customer contact, right? So contact center, customer service kind of stuff. And certainly Twilio does and aspires to do a whole lot more than that. But this for me is really sort of adding meat to the skeleton, because it really is making a pretty fundamental and really important connection based around knowing who your customers are between what's happening in marketing and what's happening on the customer service and customer conversation side. And so I really see a tremendous amount of potential here. And I absolutely think it makes sense. You know, if everything to do with interacting effectively with customers, regardless of the mode and regardless of the channel, really comes down to understanding who you're talking to and what matters with them, it makes sense to try to beef up that capability.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. You know, the funny thing about it is, you know, Twilio's greatest strength has always been that you could pretty much, you effectively, and then don't mean this too literally, dropping in a significant communications hub when you just use Twilio, when you put Twilio in, and it really increases that kind of capability to a degree that's pretty staggering. It's their strength. Segment to El Nicole's point is that that exactly it's marketing data. But the interesting thing here to me is that both of them are very API driven, right? And in this particular case, not in all cases like this, but at least from some, let's say, anecdotal discussions I've had since then, the APIs are highly, let's say this, they work together well. That's what I was told. Okay. And that alone is a very powerful thing, because, you know, it means that they won't have to do, you know, 5 years of work just to get the two companies' products to work well, because they already do. And the other thing of value, I think, here is, although I don't know what they're going to do, is that it does give Twilio a lot of other potentials to go other places than what they've done. And also, I hope to get out of just a pure, you know, they've always been focused on core IT type and communications type people, really the I in CIO types. And this gives them a chance to get past just that. The one thing I'm afraid of is that they'll call it a CP.
Oh God, I know. Heaven forbid. Well, and it's interesting because it got class, like Segment has gotten class as, you know, like ACDP, and it is, but for me, it's more than that. And it's interesting because I think the combination together is certainly far more than that. And your point about APIs, I think, is right on the money, because the really interesting thing to me here is you've got a couple of CEOs who are both deep technologists, but they fundamentally understand the problem set that they're addressing in a business sense. And so that ability to sort of match up the architectural choices and the technology design choices based on understanding the business problem set, I think is hugely powerful, because that's got to help short circuit a whole lot of the frankly really large scale challenges that companies have in making this stuff work effectively for them. You know, understanding not individual customers, but customer groups, and that combination of stuff that you need in real time and things that really feed into longer term strategic thinking and planning, and the feedback loops that go into presenting yourself to your customers really effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All I'm going to add, I'll just say this move allows Twilio to impact the data and interactive experience transformation process by removing friction from developers using their platform. Yeah. In other words, it gives developers the ability that Chu alluded to use data to build more varied applications using Twilio API.
Jesus, I hope Ron Miller has a pen to write that down.
I just wanted to add that. Okay, before we bring, we've got a lot of comments in here. Yes, Alan, apparently you do have, actually, it's not just Alan now, it's Big Al Berkson. Yes, you do have a corporate narrative.
Congratulations.
No, we're not doing the best clam chowder. Sorry, Bob. I really don't like clam.
New York versus, well, it's New York clam chowder versus Manhattan clam chowder versus
what, a
New
bagel?
England. So no, New England. Think about it.
Best blueberry bagels is nothing or is not something that exists. I beg to differ.
No, I actually agree with Alan. Best and blueberry bagel literally are a contradiction in terms.
Sven, this is actually something that just goes on all the time. So you
yeah,
don't have to make anything special for that one. And now we get some comments about what went on with the acquisition. Understanding the customers paramount. Yeah, totally agree with that. And it looks like Twilio's messaging way back. Yeah, actually, Big Al, as I like to call him, he actually talked about a conversation he had with Jeff Lawson years ago, and it eerily kind of equates to what's going on with Twilio today. So Big Al is 2 for 2 today. First with the Dennis Howlett pins, and now this, and with the new corporate narrative too. So that's a good thing. All right, now before we bring on our guests, I just want to play this is like a minute and change clip. We all been sitting in these virtual conferences, and we're all kind of like, we're critics. We're not only paying attention, but we're to the content. We're paying attention to how it's being presented and all these things and how things look and how they sound. And we just yesterday talked to during the happy hour, we had our buddy Alex Shapiro, who just, congrats to him. He's just going to be starting up working at NVIDIA. And NVIDIA is a company that probably wasn't on a lot of our radars a couple of years ago from a virtual event perspective or, an AI perspective. But I think they're about to really be on all of our radars and the impact they're going to have on a lot of the things that we are doing now to make them better. So this clip is going to walk you through, and I find this really interesting, some of the ways that they are going to be impacting some of the stuff that we're all doing today. So with that as a setup, let me do this. And then make sure the sound is on. And here we go.
A self-driving car needs to correctly anticipate or predict the future actions of road users in order for it to drive safely. So today in Drive Labs, we're talking about our prediction net deep neural network.
Yankee hat.
Wow, that is a lot of noise that no one else needs to hear. Okay, that's better. That's so much better.
If only she could do that for herself, too.
There was recently a sign of extraterrestrial life on Venus. What else do you want to know?
What do we think we're looking at for Wednesday in terms of layout?
这个设计的整体结构图是在没有包装或是模型前执行的。我们会需要一点时间改动。
Hey everyone, this is Victoria. I hope you're all doing well. So today we're going to be catching up on the latest from NVIDIA research.
AI is revolutionizing many sectors of the industry right now, and NVIDIA is at the forefront of this revolution. AI is revolutionizing many sectors of the industry right now, and NVIDIA is at the forefront of this revolution.
That is some cool stuff.
Although that face alignment thing was creepier than the alien.
Well, that's the one they were talking about that a little today at the happy hour about, I forget the actual name, but what NVIDIA is doing with AI, there's deep face. You can actually change the person's face.
Yeah. Maxine.
Yeah.
Maxine is the platform. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love the video compression where because we all get those, bandwidth issues, and then we start looking crazy. And they're going to be using these technologies to do all sorts of things to improve, the kind of experiences we have doing stuff like this and beyond. I just thought that was really fascinating, and that's kind of at the tip of the iceberg.
We can get somebody. I think I know a way we can get somebody pretty senior on NVIDIA on the show. So let's do it.
Let's do it, and let's do this. Let's welcome Rachel Spasser.
There she is.
There it is. Hello. How are you?
So this isn't really me. This is an NVIDIA image of me. I'm actually on the beach, tanning.
It's Maxine Spasser.
Exactly.
Right?
Wow. No, well, thank you for joining us. Yeah, it's great to have you.
Sure.
So let me introduce Rachel. So Rachel is here's kind of what she does. She's a partner and the CMO of AccelKKR. I'm sure anybody who knows the PE world, the VC world, the investment world knows that company. And I have a very specific name I call Rachel too. I call her the Huntress. She's the Huntress. And the reason I call her that is I've known Rachel, we've known each other about 12 years, something like that now.
Yeah.
Go all the way back to Knowledge Storm and Tech Target. And yeah, it goes way, way back. And so when we sort of reconnected and I started seeing what she was doing at AccelKKR, I noticed that half the time I'd hear about this new candidate for potential acquisition or investment or whatever would be someone that Rachel found, right? I mean, now, when I first met her, she was very circumspect and said that she was CMO. She didn't tell me she was a partner at the time, right? And I was thinking, wow, that's a pretty big amount. There's a lot of other things besides CMO work that she's doing there. And then the other thing I found in the course of all of this was her knowledge of the industry, and I mean down to the level of the individuals in the industry, not just the industry, right? Like the people, what they're doing, where they are, the movement in the industry it's just like insanely huge. It's just gigantic. It's like you want the knowledge of a company, talk to Rachel. You want the best gossip on a person, you can talk to Rachel, right? She's going to know all of this, right? And she really is something. I'll put it this way, even though she's probably in a better position than what I'm about to suggest, but she could be a leading industry analyst pretty easily. Well, I'd rather be where she is, I think.
Why would she want to, given all that?
Why would you? Why would you? So that's Rachel. She's amazing. Seriously.
But the most important thing, he didn't let us know whether this is the case or not. But do you have a favorite football team?
I do, but it's not the Patriots.
Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you.
And feel free to come back.
Yeah, you don't even have to tell us what the team is anymore. We know what we just heard is all we wanted to hear. So let me start the questions actually, because I actually think first of all, I think a lot of people know of the world you're in, but they don't really know how you think, right? And I didn't, even though I've known individuals over a long time. But can you give people an idea, to the extent you can, of the kind of the process that you go through just to think about a potential target for? It doesn't even have to be acquisition per se, just investment, acquisition, whatever. A target you're interested in. What makes you interested? And you can be specific to AccelKKR's, target markets and so on too. So you fill people in on that? Yeah.
Absolutely. So first of all, just by way of background, I've only been in private equity for 6 years. So most of my career was actually in internet and software related companies. So every day I'm still learning about private equity and how private equity people think. I think, I've got another 10 years or so before I'll fully understand it. But I would say, for us in particular, we invest in software companies and tech-enabled services businesses. And we look at, some of the things that I think anybody who is looking at a company and saying, is this a good company or not a good company, might think about, right? So we obviously look at the management team. We look at the vision. Where are they going? What are they aiming to do? And then we look at the fundamentals of the business. So today, in a world of SaaS, we look at things like recurring revenue and gross margins and so the financial fundamentals. And then, what are things like retention rates, right? What do customers think of these companies, and how important is this software to the businesses that
that they run, because at the end of the day, when you hit a period like right now in COVID, if you're not a fundamental piece of their equation, of your customer's business, it's going to be really easy for them to say, yeah, I'm not paying that this year. We're not doing well. I'm just not going to pay for that. But if you're really core to who they are and how they operate, they can't rip you out. And so you become really part of, I would say, the infrastructure or foundation of their businesses. So those are that's specific to AccelKKR. I think that generally speaking, private equity, regardless of the category, probably looks for things like that: the financial fundamentals, the management team, and their vision of where they're going. And then how important is whatever they're selling to their end customers, and what kind of relationship do they have with their end customers?
How do you determine what's a vision that works for you? That's actually hard. It's like, I can see the management team is, some cut and dried things you can do there, and financials are financials, but deciding that, oh, well, we like their vision because, where's the because there?
Yeah, we do a lot of market work. So we try and understand the customers and what the needs of the customers are and where the industry or the space is going. So I said we invest in software, but we invest in hotel tech software. We invest in healthcare IT and financial services. And so understanding those end markets and where those end markets are going, and then seeing whether we believe that their vision is aligned to where that end market is going, is really how we do it. I don't think there's any magic, and by all means, we're not always right. But and then I would say, the other piece is what are the steps to get to that vision? Because maybe the end vision isn't exactly right, but as long as the steps along the way are logical, you'll have time to figure out if you need to adjust. But if you're going from here to here and you don't have logical steps in between, you're betting the farm on a technology, and you're not taking care of your customers along the way. That's where you get into trouble.
I've got a question on that, Rachel, because I think one of the really interesting things is I had like a 12 or 13 year hiatus in my analyst career where I did real jobs. And so it's kind of fun to compare and contrast, what life was like then and what life is like now. And I think one of the things that certainly a number of people have observed is that the kinds of software companies that are getting big investment now and that are growing significantly would have been considered features back in the day when a lot of what we consider really fundamental business software was coming out on the market. So there's that on one hand. And yet on the other hand, the other thing that I see, and I think we talk about a lot on this show, is that actually it's really, really hard to take all the complexity of, say, a particular business process or even part of it and simplify that so that it makes the work that the person using the software is doing really, really easy. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how that shapes the way that you guys think of a good opportunity, because it's certainly not what it used to be in the classical sense, right?
I think it is and it isn't. So we try hard not to invest in feature companies, or if we do, we try to invest with a vision to what a platform, maybe they're the first piece in what a platform ultimately becomes. Because at the end of the day, I think you're right. And, I look at marketing technology, for example, and you could spend the rest of your life buying marketing technology that doesn't fit together well and actually doesn't solve your problems. And so it's really important for us, and that's why I said it, it needs to be fundamental to the way they do their job, as opposed to just, that's really cool. And, and I think maybe that's a little bit more of what the decision criteria is, which is, can this, even if it's a feature today, but we have a vision for what we would need to do in order to make it something that is core to their workflow, or saves them time, or saves them money, or gives them the opportunity to accomplish something they couldn't do in the past. But we think about it more in terms of process. So what are the processes they're doing, and how does this fit in, as opposed to this is technology and what can we apply the technology to? So, and I think that actually is a little bit of where venture and PE sort of, and again, I am no expert. I've been doing this for 6 years, right? So there are a lot of people who know a lot more about technology investing than I do. But I would say that in private equity, because we're typically investing post the product market fit stage, we really aren't, we don't have technology looking for a problem. We typically understand that our technology is solving a problem that existed and was created to solve that problem. And I think that's a little bit of the difference.
It's kind of interesting. I'm actually going to be talking to a gentleman by the name of Scott Beachuk next week. We knew him from his days at Salesforce, but I think for the last 3 or 4 years, he's actually been at Norwest Partner Ventures. And he said something kind of similar to what you just said. He said, I've only been doing this for like 3 or 4 years. You usually really don't know if you're successful or if you know what you're doing until you're about 10 years in, which is kind of interesting to hear that from you too. So interesting. And let me get this comment out of the way before I get into my real question. Yeah, Bob, I don't care that she's not a Rams fan or not. I just care that she's not a Patriots fan. So there's that. All right, moving right along. Talk a little bit about the relationship once you've made the determination and you've acquired or you merged or whatever, however you like to phrase it, that you have a company that you're bringing into the fold. Talk about how you kind of work with them. You joined the board, but how is that kind of the day-to-day relationship and guidance that you provide once you've made that the acquisition and you brought them into the fold, and how does that work?
Yeah, well, so that part is actually near and dear to my heart because I'm actually on the operating side of the firm. So we have people on the deal side or the investment side, and then the consulting group, which is the operating group, and we function really as one. We do diligence together, and then continue on in the investment. But a lot of what my team is responsible for is really helping companies. And I would say in a lot of ways, it's helping companies go up the maturity curve. So when we invest in companies, we are often investing at a time when they have, they've gotten to a certain point and they're not necessarily sure how they can get to that next level. And so our job is to help identify the things that they need to do in order to scale the organization and reach the next level from a revenue perspective. So that that manifests itself in all different areas, right? It could be sales and marketing, and sometimes we help them find talent, right? So they've got talent, they have people who know how to scale from 0 to 10 million, but how do I get from 10 to 100? And bringing in talent, people who've done that before, can be really impactful to an organization. Sometimes it's working on processes. So a lot of times when we invest, we'll talk about sales process, and they'll say, yes, I have a sales process. And they'll walk you through what is not a sales process, right? And so we start at the beginning and say, okay, well, it's almost like, how does a bill become a law, right? Let's talk about how does the lead become revenue, right? And how do you, and what does that customer life cycle look like? And what do you need to do at each phase? So sometimes people confuse having a CRM with actually having a sales process. And so, we spend a lot of time working with our companies on things like that. And then I would say, we also spend time on, just core fundamentals. Who are you as a company? What's your cause? What's your reason for being? And how do you communicate that? And I think in B2B tech, we're terrible at communicating. Like, we want to say we're the leading provider of XYZ that helps you do, ABC, and no one understands exactly what we're talking about. And so really trying to help companies identify what is it that you do and what problems are you solving and for whom, and how do you focus then on doing that really, really well instead of going after the shiny objects. Those are the kinds of things that we do after we make an investment.
It sounds like, I just got to put this in and then I'll let you go there, Paul. But it sounds like you help companies kind of put together their corporate narrative. Would that be fair to say?
We do, and I know I missed the beginning, so I know that there's an inside joke here. I'm afraid to walk into it, so I'll just say yes.
No, that's okay.
Also recognize it's not that inside a joke.
No,
pretty much an outside joke at this point. So you give all these companies this, let's say, give them some sage advice on how to do things. Do they actually listen? Do they have to listen?
Yeah, I was going to say, do they have a choice?
You do own them, but
yeah,
how does that work?
I would say AccelKKR's culture is not one of I'm going to force this down your throat. So I think that's where your skills in influencing people can come in, but you're not always successful doing that, right? And I think that's ultimately a challenge as an investor in a business. If you can see, you think you can see clearly what needs to happen, but you can't necessarily convince someone. And I think, for all investors, AccelKKR, or anyone else, there are times when it can be incredibly frustrating if someone really, isn't willing to listen. And look, sometimes they're right and we're wrong. So I'm not, we don't have the keys to the kingdom on always being right. But it's a great question. And I think, in all candor, one of the things I struggled with the most when I first left corporate life and moved into this role in private equity was, how do I help companies in some cases when they don't want to be helped? And that's a challenge.
I'm kind of curious to pick up on this, the difference between the way private equity thinks about investing and the way VC does, because you guys are investing in typically more older, if not necessarily more mature companies, right? And
right.
The interesting dynamic there, one of the things I've always thought is kind of a cool opportunity in PE more than any other type of investing is you can kind of take a vision to say, hey, a lot of the pieces are here to make something really cool, but they're not really in the right places. So, kind of how much of your work life is really sort of trying to define the jigsaw pieces and figure out where to put them?
I think that's a great point. And I think a lot of your life is like that, where, in most cases, I think something like 70% of the companies we invest in, were founder run when we initially made the investment. And, founders are really special people at creating, something from nothing. But sometimes they're not great at rearranging the pieces to meet the needs at a particular point in time. And so part of what we need to do is help them figure out how to rearrange those pieces and get themselves and their companies and their employees and their customers ready for whatever that next step is on their journey. So to your corporate narrative question, our corporate narrative is we work to help advance people's journey, right? And so for founders, they're on a journey, and we want to be part of helping them advance that journey. And by the way, as an aside, we have a wonderful group of limited partners who represent amazing causes, medical research and university endowments and firefighter and teacher pension funds. And so we get up every day thinking about how we can help them advance their journey. So, the interesting thing about private equity is it's really two-sided. It's helping the founders and the companies, but also the benefit of doing that is that we can help these institutions achieve their objectives as well, which is pretty neat.
Hey, we got a question from our buddy Sven. If you decide for an investment, how do you come to a model how the investment will / could look like? But how would you go about that?
So we have a lot of really smart analytical people who are building models every day as we look at making investments. And as you guys know, building models is all about the assumptions. And so because we invest in software companies and tech-enabled services companies exclusively, and mainly business application, not only, but primarily business application companies. And we've invested in over 200 to date. We have some level of pattern recognition. So the assumptions that we're building into the model are based on just experience and and what we learn from our market research and what we learn from the management teams. So I can't say it's magic. I think it's a lot of lessons, some good, some not great. What we hear from the management teams, what we do in terms of our research, we often do a lot of expert calls, as we're researching an investment, so we do a ton of customer calls, and all of these things are inputs into our assumptions. And from then it's an exercise in, building a really complex model in Excel. But I think the hard part and really the important part is how do we get to those assumptions?
So have you ever, given you obviously have a pretty, let's say, tightly knit process, but in the way you do this, but have you ever just taken a flyer on a company and it worked? When I say that, nobody, problem of course with asking that question is there's always somebody to, stick their hand in your face and say, don't, right? But every now and then something happens, right? So it gets past that hand, and something happens where, let's say this, the company is probably riskier than you normally would take the risk on, but people had a good feeling about it, and some of the numbers worked out mostly. Ever do that at any point with AccelKKR?
So I'll be honest, I've never seen us take a flyer. There are some companies where there's probably more of a leap of faith or the assumption is a little looser, but I don't think we're in the business of taking flyers.
No, yeah, but I actually know, I won't say who, but I know a company that did, and meaning let's say they ran their process exactly as you just described, or their version of it, and it's one of those, this is really probably 40-60 we should do it, but there were certain things that just appealed to people and they did it, and it was insanely successful, right? Again, they told me the process, so I'm not gonna say who it is, but they basically took something that when their assessment was done was less than 50-50 and went with it anyway. And again, that may be what I'm talking about there. Nobody's gonna take a complete flyer, obviously, especially if you have anybody involved in financial anything at all, right? So, right. So, but are there any of those companies where it looked like to be, let's call it then this, I'll rephrase it, a greater risk than you normally would prefer to take?
Yeah, look, I think I am sure, and again, I'm probably not the best person to speak to this. I am sure that there are instances where we stretch a little bit in terms of, hey, we think this might have more risk, but also more right tail outcome. I think every investment firm probably does that, but they probably do that sparingly, so that that's certainly not the norm. But I imagine that happens, with every firm.
I actually can think of a company of yours that I would say meets that criteria.
I'm also going to be talking with you in the green room afterwards.
Exactly. Eating products, right?
Hey, before El Nicole jumps in, this quick question from Boston Bob Fagel here. Yeah. I think you already talked a little bit about it, but are there other places, other ways, other areas that you get your investment ideas and research? Where do you go for that?
I would say, so we have sourcing people on the team that are always out there going to industry conferences and, reading the works of analysts like yourselves to get new ideas and understand where things are going. Investment firms have to be students of the space in which they invest. And that means being out there, getting out there a lot, having a lot of conversations, meeting a lot of people. I think one of the most fun parts of my job is that, I meet people every day, people who are looking for jobs, people who are looking to sell companies, people, so it's when Paul talks about your knowledge base, I just have a good memory and I've met a lot of people. So that's kind of how you build that knowledge base. But I think that's it. I don't think AccelKKR does anything different than a lot of others, which is just we try and be really, really smart about the space and people, and and just continue to learn. And one of our core values is continuous learning and sort of truth seeking. And so that's what people do every day.
I've got one, Rachel, and I don't know how much you can comment on this, if at all, but I'm kind of curious. One of the things that I think we've all seen in our professional lives over the last 6 or 7 months is some really distinct reprioritization among companies and what they're investing in and why. And I think a sharpening of focus certainly on a few key priorities. And I think in general, business software has done very well, particularly anything that's focused on commerce or connecting with customers and all of this kind of stuff. Have you seen any impact on the investments that are in your portfolio? Are you seeing different groupings emerge? Are they all doing well? Are there areas that are potentially starting to see a hit of some kind, or doing really outstandingly well? And I don't know how much you can comment on some of the stuff, but it's really fascinating to me to see, going back to what you were saying earlier, some of this stuff really has come out as even more critical to the way businesses operate than was obviously the case before.
Well, the whole cloud discussion is, it cracks me up because cloud, obviously, I'm talking to you guys, it's been around forever, right? It was just called ASP, and then it was called, SaaS and cloud and whatever. But I feel like COVID has all of a sudden made companies and industries that were like, cloud, right? And now their employees are working from home and they're like, no one can access any of our tools because they're all working from home, right? So I would say anything in the SaaS space, and not just within our portfolio, but has probably seen a benefit. Anything e-commerce related has probably seen a benefit from COVID. And then, from how companies are doing, a lot of it depends on their end market, probably even more so than the application category that they're in, is just how's the end market doing? Because software is great, it's recurring revenue, it's contracted for 3 to 5 years often. So you're not going to see a hit as long as your customers are healthy. If your customers are going out of business, it doesn't matter whether you have a contract or not, they're not going to be around to pay the bill. And so I think that where you see the impact of COVID on software companies is often more related to the end market that they serve than the actual application category that they're in.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that's still to play out, right? That's probably the next year or two ahead of us.
Can we talk about when do you see things not working out after you made the acquisition and investment and you've worked with them for a while? When do you start seeing signs that things aren't working out, and what do you do when that actually happens?
They're leading indicators to what, if things aren't working out, right? Customer churn starts going up, or bookings per rep starts to go way down. They're definitely leading indicators. And so, what we do is really try and monitor those closely enough that we can get ahead of what that leading indicator is. And in most cases, it's things that can be fixed. I think it's the rare exception where it can't be fixed because the market just moved in a way that, and left you behind. So I think it's more, it tends to be, okay, we see this trend changing. What does it mean? Let's dig in and let's figure out how to fix it. And that could be a people problem. That could be a process problem. That could be an end market problem. Customers aren't healthy, and so, or their margins keep getting thinner, and so they're churning more. And so what do we need to do in order to modify the way that we do business in order to solve that? So I think, one of the good or bad, depending on which side of the table you're sitting on sometimes, but one of the things that I think companies really benefit from in working with financial sponsors is that we are very attuned to numbers and trends. And sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to see, or if it's happening really slowly, it's hard to see. But when you're slightly removed from it, you can see it more clearly. And so I think we can identify things sometimes that the company itself may not see yet.
So one of the things we haven't talked about is who are some of the companies in your portfolio, right? Because to the extent you're comfortable talking about, who are some of the companies that people who might be listening in here would know? I can think of 3, but I'll wait to hear.
Well, so you can go to our website, AccelKKR.com, and see all of our companies. It's not a secret at all. I'm always afraid to answer that question because then if I leave someone out, they get mad. So why don't you tell me some of the companies in my portfolio and then in our portfolio, and then I can comment on it.
That's really smart.
I'll write them down I'll throw it right back. I'll write them down in the private chat and you can read it.
I'll say I know one because I put it in the description anyway. Sugar.
All right. Right. CRM.
Yeah. And then click the mentions, which is another local one here.
Right. Yeah. And then Smart Communications.
Oh, that's right.
There.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thunderhead spinoff.
Yeah, and I mean, in the CRM space, so we've invested in some vertically oriented CRM companies as well. We have Sendine, which is in the hotel tech sector. We have Reapit, which is in the real estate, or they call it estate agency sector because they're in the UK and Australia, and they're all in and around CRM. And then we have companies, again, in financial services, companies like Abrigo, some in healthcare, Patient Co. And we've got the interesting thing about our portfolio is we have companies around the world. So we have a number of investments in Latin America. We've got some in Australia, New Zealand, in Europe, and here in the States. So it's a pretty broad portfolio. And again, you can go to our website and check out the companies. And if you have good suggestions for us on companies that we should look at, bring them on.
Always do.
CRM Playaz, you might want to take a look.
That's right. We qualify as mid-market. Right. We qualify as anything we want, really. Whatever. So
I had just one quick one. How much does timing play into this? Like, what you see, this hot opportunity in this, one technology space, and you see that it looks like there's this one company that looks like a perfect fit. If you can get them on board quick, it's great. But what if you can't get them on board in the time frame that you want? And how much does that affect the actual deal? Do you walk away if it looks like it's going to miss your time window, or do you say, you know what, this is a good company, we're going to go for it anyway?
Look, I think private equity and finding companies is almost like enterprise sales and software. You build relationships over time. Yeah, you get some bluebirds. It just happens to be the right time and the right place. But we develop relationships with companies over the course of time, and sometimes they're not ready, and sometimes it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. But we keep in touch, and often at some point in the future, if it doesn't work out initially, it works out in the future. So I think for us, it's about continuing to stay in touch, continuing, again, just like enterprise sales, continuing to try and deliver value to them as just a third party until the point when maybe the deal can be consummated.
All right. So maybe one final question, and this will take you possibly a little time. You have an analyst head. You do. I mean, you think like an analyst. You kind of have to, number one. And number two, you actually do think like one. So we have you've seen over the last, I don't know, this year, obviously we're seeing market trends of varying types. We're seeing acceleration of some things. We're seeing the falling away of other things. We're seeing things emerge that we hadn't seen before, and some of them coming kind of in and around as opposed to straight down the middle. Like I'm picking one out of a hat, just given what we like video collaboration tools, all of a sudden becoming a big deal in CRM, right? In engagement, because of engagement, right? So, what's your view of the market? Where's it going? What are the trends you see? The ones that even put them in terms of the ones that appeal to you. In addition,
I feel wholly unqualified with this group to give you industry trends. That's an unfair question, Paul. I think Paul's like next to my mom. He might be my biggest fan, but I don't think I can. I don't think I can answer that question.
Wait a minute, this isn't the Supreme Court justice hearings now.
Not only that, if you don't answer it, though, I'm going to ask your mother to ask you the question.
Look, I think I think this interaction that we have is the future, right? And I'm I'm a little old school, so I don't believe it will ever replace the face-to-face. I don't believe that stores will ever will ever go away completely, but I believe that e-commerce is going to continue to grow in importance. I believe that that technology that enables person-to-person interactions throughout a customer and vendor or partner life cycle, those are the things that are going to continue to grow at a pretty rapid rate. And so things that collect data, that help you get smarter about people and interactions, I think is where the future is going. I laugh because everyone says, AI and ML. And I'm like, why is AI and ML? Like, it's like those things never, like, because no one understands what AI is versus that. So they're like, yeah, AI, ML. And I'm like, so yes, I think that machines are going to get smarter in helping humans do their jobs better. But and so to the degree that we can start incorporating things like that, more decision tools, that's where I think, those are the things that I think are going to continue to make us smarter as human beings and make interactions more meaningful, which ultimately I think is the name of the game.
There you go. It wasn't so hard.
Yeah. And we didn't have to line up the senators to, do the inquiry.
And I didn't have to, and I don't have to call your mother. So it works out perfectly.
Now we do want to, before you leave, we're going to give you a hot take. So is this the kind of LinkedIn connection that you would say yes to?
Yeah.
No. Nor do I answer a BD. Yeah, I was going to say, nor do I answer a BDR who tells me that, that the dog stole, their homework. No.
All right. Well, hey, we appreciate you taking time to do this with us.
Awesome.
It was informative and it was fun too. So this has been great. And are you located here in Atlanta?
I am. So I'm waiting for a lunch invitation, Brent.
Well, once the sheltering in place is over with, you have got it.
All right.
Absolutely. Now, this has been great. Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right.
Thanks,
Rachel.
Wow. Man, when she goes, she goes. She goes quick.
She's great.
But not forgotten because that was good. Yes, that was
really good.
She's got fans too. Like Bill, I'm going to start calling him Boston Bill Patterson to go along with Boston Bob Fagel. But Bob was at Smart Comms, and apparently he remembers her fondly. And Bill was at, of course, Microsoft with Click Dimensions. They had a real tight relationship there. So this is cool stuff. I'm just curious about all this PE versus VC, and where it's fitting.
It's a different kind of investment, right? I mean, and she said it, like, you're investing at a different stage of maturity or development in the companies. And it's really interesting because if you look at PE, since I'm such an expert, in other kinds of industry sectors, that's where you saw really major restructuring in a lot of industries actually happen through private equity. And I remember back when I was still an analyst the first time around, there were a couple of us that were talking about whether private equity would actually come in and make some significant changes in the technology services space, because a few of us could see where, there were pieces that really needed to be significantly reconfigured. And it's hard to do that without the mechanism of private equity in some cases, where you can, combine different parts of multiple companies and sell off other pieces that might do better as standalone. It's not always politically popular, but it is actually a really critical role. And so I'm fascinated by what PE is doing in software, because I do think it's actually a really important function for helping to put together these kinds of, whether you want to call them portfolios or platforms or whatever, that really are putting the right pieces together for customers.
And to your point too, I mean, the thing with the PE firms is, though, there's a lot of variance in philosophy, though, and how they do things. Like,
Absolutely.
There's one who I'll leave it unnamed because I think Rachel's actually married to someone who works for them, who come in and pretty much, from my perspective anyway, pretty much suck the life out of companies, and then they basically strip them down and get as much. They basically strip them down so they can get as much out of them as they can before they leave their lifeless holes, right? And then you have the AccelKKRs. One of the reasons I like them as much as I do is their whole look. I mean, at the end of the day, a PE firm's outcome is selling the company again, right? So one way or the other, after a certain amount of time, that company will no longer be part of that PE firm's portfolio. So, and the thing that's fascinating is the way that these guys work is that their idea is, let us invest what we have to make this company successful to the point that we decide to sell. And so they give them acquisition money, and they fund these companies really well. And that's always been AccelKKR's philosophy. So I really like their thinking. It's more growth than it is, let's say, cost efficiencies and life-sucking behavior.
It's building a long-term sustainable business, and it's a really fundamentally different philosophy, whether you're a founder or an investor.
Yeah, and she was very polite to founders, I have to say.
I'll just say this. When I think, Paul, when you first told me about Rachel, this was a couple of years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
You said she was with the PE firm. I thought public enemy, but I kind of got excited. But it's still cool. I appreciate it just as much. Although I did get a little excited, thinking I might be getting it
finally
talk to Chuck D or somebody. But
that's right. Pull out that equipment a couple of years earlier.
Fight the power. This is another good week. This is a good follow-up to last week. I thought it was really nice.
Yeah, I know. She's great.
And tomorrow we got tell us who we got. Scott McIntyre.
Yeah, Scott McIntosh. Right. Scott is the head of the sports vertical for SAP. We had him on the show once, but he had a massive, let's call it connectivity failure. And it didn't make it more than like 2 minutes into the show. So that was when we found out we had a corporate narrative. I think it was that day when we had Big Al on the show.
Actually,
right, so
I remember that because before he could say, "Hi, I'm Scott Mackin," it cut out.
He was right. He was gone. It was awful.
That's why I thought it was Tyre, but it's McIntosh. See, if he had been there for just a split second longer, I would have known that. But
we would have. Well, he claims he has the bandwidth now, so we should be good for tomorrow, and he's very excited. So we'll hear what SAP is doing in the sports world, and they are doing quite a lot. So
they're doing a lot.
Be a big SAP week.
Yeah.
Right?
We didn't even get a chance to talk about the SAP CX Live, which was really interesting.
I was going to say, Brent, this one's for you, but I was at a Capgemini analyst briefing this week as well, bringing on a couple of customers, one of them being Fila, and some direct consumer stuff that they did around the Biggie Smalls sort of tie-in that they did directly through their own like brand spanking new commerce approach. So interesting.
Wow, Fila. I mean, back in the day, they were.
I know, man.
They were there with Adidas, and I think I might have had a pair of Filas actually. But that's for another time.
Exactly.
I know, and I can guarantee I did not have a pair of Filas.
And on that note, folks, I'm Brett Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
And I'm Nicole France.
We are the CRM Players, and we are going to stay silent for about 10 seconds, and then we will end the broadcast. Let's see if this works finally.
No, it's so hard not